Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you could be here. I've got a book review for you today for Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, as well as Dawnshard, the novella that preceded Rhythm of War. And before we get into that, I want to kind of let you know that I've changed up the format on this a little bit. I'm doing both a spoiler-free video, which is this video, and a spoiler-filled video, which is a separate video that you can find a link to in the description below. So if you are interested in watching that, if you've already read the book and you are ready to talk spoilers, go check out that video. You can still watch this one by all means. So let's get right to it. Rhythm of War is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. And it is just a fantastic book. It's a lot more action-packed than the first three books were. Even though all of the first three books had their share of action scenes. But this was the most fast-paced of all of them, in my personal opinion. The first three books kind of set up the story, and then you got the fourth book, which really just kind of gets things going. So just a phenomenal read. It was preceded by Dawnshard, which is a novella set in the same world of the Stormlight Archive. And kind of like they did with book 3, there was a book that preceded that one as well, a novella called Edge Dancer. And that followed a character named Lift, who then featured prominently in Oathbringer, the third book in the Stormlight Archive series. So the Dawnshard was done the same way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both of them, and I will do my best, as I said, to avoid any spoilers in case you have not read these books. And maybe you have not read the Stormlight Archive series as a whole. And if you haven't, you are seriously missing out. If you like Brandon Sanderson, or if you like fantasy in general and you have not checked out Brandon Sanderson, you need to read this series. It is phenomenal. Phenomenal. You heard it right. So let's get going. I'm going to start with Dawnshard, and I'm going to be pretty brief with that one. But Dawnshard takes place on the sea mostly. It's a sea voyage, and there is a character named Risen, who is a paraplegic, and she is the commander or the owner of a ship. And so she is on the voyage with the ship, and they are on this mission to a group of unknown islands, or uncharted islands rather, to do some treasure hunting, essentially. And they go on this voyage, and they're facing hang-ups at every turn, right? I mean, first the food gets spoiled, and other things happen, and it just seems like everything that they try and make this journey and get there safe and have enough supplies, everything just keeps going wrong. And just as if something is trying to keep them from going to this remote set of islands. And it's just a really unique and interesting tale. I thought it was very well done, and it's really cool because it gives you a glimpse into two of the characters in the Stormlight Archive specifically. One, of course, being Risen, and the other being the Lopen, he's a Herdasian, and he is just, he's the comic relief of the story. He really is. He's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, he says some of the most off-the-wall stuff that you would ever expect from anybody. So just really, really funny at times, and the story was really endearing. Risen has this pet. I forget what the animal's called, but it's a shelled creature of some kind, almost like a crab of sorts, but not really a crab either. And it's a lot bigger than a crab too. The animal's name is Chiri, and it's just really cute. One thing that I was really impressed with is the way that Brandon Sanderson handles disability or people who are differently abled. And Risen had lost the use of her legs in an accident, and it was very, very clear throughout the entire book that Brandon Sanderson had done his homework and talked to people who dealt with being a paraplegic and other disabilities, and how they felt like they were treated by people, and the way people assumed that they couldn't do certain things just because of their disability, and the emotions that they had to go through. And all of these were very clearly presented in Risen's story, and the way that she felt going through life without the use of her legs. And it was just really, really heartwarming and painful, and it really made you hurt for Risen in one sense because of the way that people looked at her differently, but at the same time it was really encouraging because here's a person who, despite everything that life has thrown at her, she just keeps going. She doesn't let it get her down. She looks for ways that she can modify her mobility to keep going and do what she needs to do. Just really, really powerful story. And so I highly encourage you to check it out. If you read up through Oathbringer in the series, and you're wanting to get started right away with Rhythm of War, you don't have to read Dawnshard in order to read Rhythm of War. It will be helpful. There are some comments and mentions of different things that happened in Dawnshard in Rhythm of War. There's a few little Easter eggs here and there that you'll notice. If you've read Dawnshard, you'll see little tidbits here and there in Rhythm of War, but it's not absolutely necessary. There will be a couple of things that are mentioned that you're like, okay, what's that? And you would know what it is if you read Dawnshard. So I highly recommend you do, but you're not required to. I believe Brandon Sanderson wrote it with the intention of keeping it spoiler free with regards to Rhythm of War. So be that as it may, I do highly recommend you read it, but you don't have to. So now moving on to Rhythm of War. If you've been following the characters, I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but if you've been following the characters up until now, we're mainly dealing with just a handful of main characters. You've got Dalinar, who is a bondsmith, and he is a high-ranking officer in the military. He's been in command at different points, and now he's more of a general emeritus type of figure, if you will. He's not actively in duty as a on the field military commander, but at the same time he is in a much higher position of authority, and people definitely answer to him. You've got Kaladin, who is nicknamed Kaladin Stormblessed because of his survival skills during storms and everything, and he is he is a general over a whole bunch of different troops, specifically Windrunners, and they have the ability to channel Stormlight energy to take to the skies and travel long distances and things like that. So it's just his abilities are really cool. And you've got Shallan, who is she is a light weaver, and she can create illusions and different things like that. And you've got Adolin, who is the son of Dalinar. He's one of the main characters, and Dalinar's wife, Navani. And so you've got all these different characters that are playing, and there's all these different segments that it will give you glimpses into what's happening in their day. So it'll start with one character, and then you'll go for a certain section, and then it'll flip over to the viewpoint of another character. These are very, very character-driven stories in this book. There's plenty of world building, but not as much as the other books. That's already kind of been taken care of. So you really, really get a deep dive into so many of the different characters and their emotions and their feelings and their fears and their powers and how they overcome obstacles. It's just really, really amazing. So Rhythm of War basically takes place after they are starting to get their society together. They've found this mysterious tower, and they've taken up residence in it, and everything is going smoothly, but they're still learning some of its mysteries. And they are starting to build technologies that allow them to advance in their society, and yet at the same time they're still at war with these beings who are called the Fused, which are godlike beings that have taken over the dead bodies of certain other beings called the Singers, or in previous books they were known as the Parshendi. It's just, you can see there's just this intricate mass of world building that's been done to bring us to this point. So I thoroughly enjoyed Rhythm of War. I read it in the span of about 2 weeks. I was a crazy person. I was just, every chance I get, I was sitting down and reading the book, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta finish this. And I probably read that book faster than I would normally read a 1,400 page book, right? It was just massive. So yes, keep that in mind. It is a long book, but it is so worth your time. If you enjoy epic fantasy, if you like large books to read, make sure that you check this book out. And I think that you will be very pleased with the story. If you've not read the first 3 books, you need to. Do not pick up Rhythm of War without having read The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer at the very, very least. Otherwise, you will not know what's going on. But I highly recommend it. I give this book a solid 4.5 out of 5 stars. There were a few things that kind of bothered me, especially the author, Brandon Sanderson, made some choices in words that he would use that didn't really, I didn't think really fit the context of a fantasy world. You know, it was even little things like the mention of microscopes without any further, dialogue on what a microscope is. They just kind of automatically assumed the audience knew what a microscope is, and you and I do, but you kind of wonder if they would have known what a microscope is. They might have called it something else. So, little nitpicks like that, but I kind of felt that some things were out of continuity, but overall, it was a really, really good book. So, make sure that you check that book out. If you're a fan, you need to read Rhythm of War. It is easily, at least in my opinion, the fastest paced and the most well-rounded of the 4 books so far. And you can tell things are really ramping up now, because the next book will be book 5, which ends the first half of Brandon's major saga, and he's said before that he's dividing it up into 2 different acts, 2 different major acts. One is books 1 through 5, and then the other one is books 6 through 10. So we are nearing completion of the first major act of the Stormlight Archive, and I can't wait to find out how he ends that first act. And I have no doubt it's going to be with a bang, because that's the way Brandon Sanderson does things, is with a bang. There were so many great moments. There were so many edge of your seat moments in this book where you were like, you thought surely all hope was lost, and then somehow, by whatever stroke of luck or providence or whatever you might call it, they pull through and they they come out on top, and they defeat the enemy to a point, not totally, but they defeat the enemy to a point, and just it seemed like all hope was lost, and then all of a sudden things change. So I thought that was really handled very well. And one of my favorite characters in the Stormlight Archive is Wit. And he's not just in the Stormlight Archive. He is a recurring character in a lot of Brandon's books. And you learn a whole lot about Wit in this book. He gets so much more time in this book than he gets in any of the books that he's been in so far. So I was really, really happy about that. Make sure that you check this book out. Let me know in the comments if you read it, what your thoughts were. If you haven't read it quite yet, if you read the other 3 books, and you're just about to get to Rhythm of War or haven't picked it up yet, let me know in the comments. Talk with me. I promise I will try not to spoil it if you haven't seen it, or if seen it. What am I saying? Well, yeah, it's like watching a movie almost. If you haven't read it, I promise I will try not to spoil anything, okay? So that concludes my review for Dawnshard and Rhythm of War. Make sure to check out the link in the description below if you want to watch my spoiler-filled review. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end it here, guys. Have a great day. Make sure that you're doing all this stuff here on the screen so that you help support my channel. And most of all, make sure you read more books. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.